Mutemi, what's your reading of this?
I'd like to support what the two gentlemen have reiterated. First of all, the DP's office is a security installation. You can access, an ordinary Kenyan can access some levels of that building, but there is a level at which either you can't access unless he or his PA or someone very close to him allows you that space. And the boardroom, which I think I've been to that boardroom when the former Prime Minister used to occupy that office, that Harambee House Annex. So as Shundu has pointed out, that raises questions.
So we're not belaboring the point by talking about, hey, this meeting was held at the Deputy President.
I mean, you don't get to access, especially if you're a former sports minister who was fired. First of all, he was fired for inappropriate. I mean, he's supposed to have done some inappropriate things. So even him accessing government installations would be, curious. Why would he have that level of access? So there's that question that needs to be answered.
The narrative of political games or political scores being settled.
So
and the media being used.
If you go with the facts, as Shundu was pointed out, he's a former sports minister. He has no access to that office. He had access at that time. He left under a cloud. It is known. So the narrative has already been framed around Tanga Tanga and Kieleweke. We know he's a Tanga Tanga.
And he's a good friend of the Deputy President. He said it on record.
So there's no dispute around that. Then everything else is inference. But then if we dig deeper into this, like what are all these scandals, so-called scandals and deals, what are they about? There's a video I watched earlier on, a young man online, analyzing the issue of wealth and wealth creation. And in short, what he said is this, that if you look at, if you want to understand a country, you need to look at the 25 wealthiest people in that country, or the 25 most prominent companies, organizations in that country. And you give an example. If you look at the US, the list of billionaires, if you look at who's the top billionaire, Jeff Bezos, if you look at Elon Musk.
Bring it home.
Bill Gates and all those. There are people who have created value for the citizens of that country. For example, you've created, or Mark Zuckerberg, you've created Facebook, you've created Windows, which is selling all over the world, and you sell it at a reasonable price and almost everybody can afford it, and you become a billionaire. The alternative is in the poor countries. Those are the wealthy countries. In the poor countries, the top 25 richest people, if you ask what they've produced, there's nothing. Most of them get tenders to supply things to government, like now this kind of deal. Military equipment, you have black budgets in the military where we don't know. I think last time I heard the military was allocated 250 billion. We don't know how that money is spent. So when you ask these questions and you see people like, you read such stories like a chaser, then you start wondering, because it's if you're a Kenyan and you want to make money very fast, you need to know someone in government, someone in power who gives you a tender and you get a cut.
Yes.
We all know that.
Yes.
Just
I want you to bring it home.
Yeah, let me bring it home.
Yeah.
So knowing all that, that we are in one of those, I don't know whether I can use this word on whatever hole, X-hole in countries in Africa, whereby the more closer you are to power, or the better you are at stealing and ensuring that those in power benefit from that stealing, the higher you rise. We're actually a country of killers and looters. The better a killer or looter you are, the higher you rise. You either become a governor or a deputy president or a president or something. And I'm saying this with a straight face. The more
and with facts to back it.
I mean, these stories. I mean, all these stories that we may not have the facts set. Now, the last thing I want to say is this. Now, the media, where does the media come in? If you look at the headlines last week, the last 1 week, there's the headline, and then there's the kicker. Now, most Kenyans read only that, whether it's been shared on social media or you can't afford to buy a newspaper, so you read it in the streets. So what he has written inside with details never gets read or never gets analyzed.
Yes.
So where the media then would be questioned is these sensational headlines that you're putting and the kicker, because it says it gives a certain impression. This is what most of the guys you've interviewed actually are judging this story based on. So it becomes, someone was telling me, actually what these guys are doing, you're making the deputy president very popular because you're creating a victim mentality. And I saw that in those interviews. They actually, a lot of Kenyans think he's being victimized because of politics, and there could be something in that.
But I mean, of course, the thinking around such headlines is to get your attention, and hopefully that you'll open the pages, buy the paper, open the pages, get the details.
Unfortunately,
so is it? And you can't write the full paragraph.
You can't put everything there.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we are living in a different era from the time the journalism that you're practicing came to be. There was no social media. So social media is able to pick that and spin it and run with it, and it becomes propaganda. And another thing, I think the thing about Jubilee and its efficiency from 2013 with Cambridge Analytica is being able to run hashtag campaigns, sponsored hashtags. So actually, I think the deputy president is a victim of his own success because he was behind all that. Him and Itumbi and the others were behind all those sponsored hashtags, and now they've gotten Kenya weighted on that appetite of just sensation. Just in fact, I think even most media houses just drop that front page on Twitter, on WhatsApp, and it circulates. Nobody bothers what the story inside is. So unfortunately for you, I personally haven't read your story with the facts. I've just seen those headlines. So
this is
quite. So you have to figure out how do you go beyond that sensation, because we pick your images, your media images, small clips of videos, and people run with them.
But I don't think this means that we'll change the headlines in terms of how we go about it professionally, how we were taught to go with the headline and then the kicker, as he calls it. We'll still stick to that. It doesn't mean that we're not going by the facts.
No, we're still going by the facts.
Yes.
It actually depends on which newspaper you choose to read. Honestly, the one I work for, I think you have tried to go beyond everything else. Because people will say, I don't know, this narrative is being, I've seen this, is being sponsored by the DCI. I've seen at some point even people who support Ruto at some point could hashtag me for I don't know what. And I haven't seen anywhere where actually the DCI today spoke for the first time about this matter. And I think people...
The question is, though, is who's feeding you with this information?
Yeah.
Are you being led by the nose by the DCI? Because if you are and just churning out whatever the DCI is giving you without countering or checking with other sources, then that's the question they're putting out there.
I think people need to understand the science of how these stories are researched and how they are written eventually, what comes out on the paper. Unlike what most people think, actually the DCI rarely speaks about this because he's in charge of a whole organization. He's actually not even in charge of this particular investigation himself. Mm-hmm. There are other people who are doing this. And what crime reporters do when you have been on this beat for a number of years, you know these officers, you call them, we know each other. So when something happens, like when Echesa was arrested, I don't remember Mr. Kinoti calling a press conference and saying, hi, we have arrested Echesa. Actually, we had it at 10 a.m. because I was on the road that Echesa had been arrested from police sources, not even the DCI himself.
Yes.
Then you verify from another police source, is this actually true and why? And it took actually almost a whole day from 10 a.m. to like 6 p.m. in the evening to know why Echesa had been arrested. Because journalists went and camped on Kiambu Road up to I think like 6 p.m. and they were being blocked and no information was coming out.
Yes.
And then the DCI himself found out because there was a bit of a commotion and allowed us to go in. I was not there, but other reporters were there. And that's how then they started asking these questions on what has exactly happened, why has Echesa been arrested. That's why it took a whole 7 hours for the story to come out.
So